Chapter 17. There are few people that do not let their rooms, and Mrs. Lithebe is one. Her husband was a builder, a good and honest man, but they were not blessed with children. He built her this fine, big house. It has a room to eat and live in, and 3 rooms to sleep in, and one she has for herself, and one for the priest that she is glad to have, for it is good to have a priest. It is good to have prayers in the house. And one she has for Gertrude and the child, for do they not belong to the priest? But strangers she will not have at all. She has money enough. It is sad about the priest. It is sad about this Gertrude and the child. It is saddest of all about his son. But about his goodness she has no doubt at all. He is kind and gentle, and treats her with courtesy and respect, and uses the house as if it were his. And she admires him for what he has done, for saving Gertrude and the child, for getting his sister a new dress and a clean white cloth for her head, for getting shirt and jersey and trousers for the child. According to the custom, she has thanked him for these gifts. And it is pleasant having Gertrude and the child in the house. The girl is helpful and clean, though there is a strange carelessness about her, and she talks too easily to strangers, especially if they are men. For Mrs. Lithebe knows that she is a married woman, and Gertrude knows that the old woman is strict with her house, and she understands and is obedient. But it is saddest of all about the son, and after their custom they have wept and wailed for him. She and Gertrude talk endlessly about it. Indeed, it is the only thing they talk about now. The old man is silent, and his face has fallen into a mold of suffering, but she hears it all in his prayers and feels for him in her heart. And though he sits long hours in the chair and stares in front of him out of tragic eyes, he will stir to life when she speaks to him, and his smile lifts his face out of the mold of its suffering, and he is never otherwise than gentle and courteous toward her. Indeed, when he plays with the child, there is something that comes out of him so that he is changed. Yet even then, sometimes there is a silence, and she hears the child asking and asking unanswered, and she looks through the door, and he is sitting there silent, alone with his thoughts, his face in the mold of its suffering. Mrs. Lithebe? Umfundis. Mrs. Lithebe, you have been so kind, and I have another kindness to ask you. Perhaps it can be done. Mrs. Lithebe, you have heard of this girl who is with child by my son. I have heard of her. She lives in Pimville, in a room in the house of other people. She wishes to marry my son, and I believe it can be arranged. Then, whatever may happen, she will go with me to Indocheni and bear her child there in a clean and decent home. But I am anxious to get her away from this place, and I wondered. I do not like to trouble you, mother. You would like to bring her here, Umfundis? Indeed, that would be a great kindness. I will take her, said Mrs. Lithebe. She can sleep in the room where we eat. But I have no bed for her. That would not matter. It is better for her to sleep on the floor of a decent house than to... Indeed. Mother, I am grateful. Indeed, you are a mother to me. Why else do we live? She said. And after that he was cheerful, and called to the little boy, and sat him upon his knee, and moved him up and down quickly as a man moves on a horse. But it is not a good game, for an old man gets tired, and a child does not. So they brought out the blocks and built tall buildings like the buildings in Johannesburg, and sent them toppling over to destruction with noise and laughter. And now I must go, said Kamalo. I have a new sister to bring to you. He counted out his money. There were only 1 or 2 notes left. Soon he would have to break into the money in the post office book. He sighed a little, and put on his coat and his hat, and took up his stick. His wife would have to wait longer for her stove, and he would have to wait longer for his new black clothes and for the collars that a parson wears. The girl is not like Gertrude. She is openly glad to be in this house. Her clothes are few but clean, for she has prepared them with care, and of other belongings she has almost none at all. She opens the doors and looks into the rooms, and she is glad, not having lived before in such a house. She calls Mrs. Lithebe mother, and that pleases the good woman, and she is pleased too, because the girl can speak Sesotho after a broken fashion. Gertrude too welcomes her, for it is in no doubt dull for her in this house. They will talk much together. Indeed, Mrs. Lithebe comes upon them, and when they have been laughing together, they fall silent, Gertrude with some amusement in her eyes, and the girl confused. But Mrs. Lithebe does not like this laughter. It is the careless laughter that she does not like. She calls the girl to the kitchen to help her, and she says she does not like it. You are in a decent home, my child. Yes, mother, says the girl with downcast eyes, and you are brought here by a good and kindly man, so good that there is no word for it. The girl looked up at her eagerly. I know it, she said. Then, if you are content to be brought by him, you will not laugh so carelessly. Yes, mother. You are but a child, and laughter is good for a child, but there is one kind of laughter, and there is another. Yes, mother. You understand what I mean? I understand you completely. This old man has been hurt greatly. Do you understand what I mean? I understand you completely, and he shall not be hurt any more, not in my house. I understand you. Then go, my child, but do not speak of what we have spoken. I understand you. My child, are you content to be brought here? The girl looks at her fully. She spread out her hand, seeking some gesture to convey her conviction. I am content, she said. I desire to be nowhere but where I am. I desire no father but the infundis. I desire nothing that is not here. I see you are content. And one more thing, my child, when the little one plays with you, do not let him press so against you. It is your time to be careful. I understand you. Go then, my child. This home is your home. So there was no more of the careless laughter, and the girl was quiet and obedient, and Gertrude saw that she was a child, and left her alone, and was indifferent and amused after her own fashion. He passed again through the great gate in the grim high wall, and they brought the boy to him. Again he took the lifeless hand in his own, and was again moved to tears, this time by the dejection of his son. Are you in health, my son? The son stood and moved his head to one side, and looked for a while at the one window, and then moved and looked at the other, but not at his father. I am in health, my father. I have some business for you, my son. Are you certain that you wish to marry this girl? I can marry her? There is a friend of mine, a white priest, and he will see if it can be arranged. And he will see the bishop to see if it can be done quickly, and he will get a lawyer for you. There is a spark of life in the eyes, of some hope, maybe. You would like a lawyer? They say one can be helped by a lawyer. You told the police that these other two were with you? I told them, and now I have told them again. And then? And then they sent for them and fetched them from their cells. And then? And then they were angry with me and cursed me in front of the police and said that I was trying to bring them into trouble. And then? And then they asked what proof I had. And the only proof I had was that it was true. It was these two and no other, and they stood there with me in this house, I here and they yonder. He showed his father with his hands, and the tears came into his eyes, and he said, Then they cursed me again, and stood looking angrily at me, and said one to the other, How can he lie so about us? They were your friends? Yes, they were my friends, and they will leave you to suffer alone. Now I see it. And until this, were they friends you could trust? I could trust them. I see what you mean. You mean they were the kind of friends that a good man could choose, upright, hard-working, obeying the law. Old man, leave him alone. You lead him so far, and then you spring upon him. He looks at you sullenly. Soon he will not answer at all. Tell me, were they such friends? But the boy made no answer. And now they leave you alone. Silence. Then, I see it. Did you not see it before? Reluctantly, the boy said, I saw it. The old man was tempted to ask then, why? Why did you continue with them? But the boy's eyes were filled with tears, and the father's compassion struggled with the temptation and overcame it. He took his son's hands, and this time they were not quite lifeless, but there was some feeling in them, and he held them strongly and comfortingly. Be of courage, my son. Do not forget there is a lawyer, but it is only the truth you must tell them. I shall tell him only the truth, my father. He opened his mouth as though there were something he would say, but he did not say it. Do not fear to speak, my son. He must come soon, my father. He looked at the window, and his eyes filled again with tears. He tried to speak carelessly. Or it may be too late, he said. Have no fear of that. He will come soon. Shall I go now to see when he will come? Go now, soon, soon, my father. And Father Vincent will come to see you, so that you can make confession and be absolved and amend your life. It is good, my father. And the marriage, that will be arranged if we can arrange it. And the girl, I had not told you, she is living with me in Sophiatown, and she will come back with me to Indocheni, and the child will be born there. It is good, my father. And you may write now to your mother. I shall write, my father. And wipe away your tears. The boy stood up and wiped his eyes with the cloth that his father gave him, and they shook hands, and there was some life now in the hand of the boy. The warder said to the boy, You may stay here. There is a lawyer to see you. You, old man, you must go. So Kamalo left him, and at the door stood a white man, ready to have come in. He was tall and grave, like a man used to heavy matters, and the warder knew him and showed him much respect. He looked like a man used to great matters, much greater than the case of a black boy who has killed a man, and he went gravely into the room, even as a chief would go. Kumalo returned to the mission house, and there had tea with Father Vincent. After the tea was over, there was a knock at the door, and the tall, grave man was shown into the room. And Father Vincent treated him also with respect and called him Sir, and then Mr. Carmichael. He introduced Kumalo to him, and Mr. Carmichael shook hands with him and called him Mr. Kumalo, which is not the custom. They had more tea and fell to discussing the case. I shall take it for you, Mr. Kumalo, said Mr. Carmichael. I shall take it pro Deo, as we say. It is a simple case, for the boy says simply that he fired because he was afraid, not meaning to kill, and it will depend entirely on the judge and his assessors, for I think we will ask for that and not for a jury. But with regard to the other two boys, I do not know what to say. I hear, Mr. Kamalo, that your brother had found them another lawyer, and indeed I could not defend them, for I understand that their defense will be that they were not there at all, and that your son is, for reasons of his own, trying to implicate them. Whether that is true or not will be for the court to decide, but I incline to the opinion that your son is speaking the truth and has no motive for trying to implicate them. It is for me to persuade the court that he is speaking the whole truth, and that he speaks the whole truth when he says that he fired because he was afraid, and therefore I obviously could not defend these two who maintain that he is not speaking the truth. Is that clear, Mr. Kamalo? It is clear, sir. Now I must have all the facts about your son, Mr. Kamalo, when and where he was born, and what sort of child he was, and whether he was obedient and truthful, and when and why he left home, and what he has done since he came to Johannesburg. You understand? I understand, sir. I want this as soon as I can, Mr. Kamalo, for the case will probably be heard at the next sessions. You must find out what he has done, not only from him, but from others. You must check the one account against the other, you understand, and if there are differences, you must give them also, and I shall do the same of my own account. Do you understand? I understand, sir. And now, Father Vincent, could you and I go into this matter of the school? With pleasure, sir. Mr. Kumalo, will you excuse us? He took Kumalo to the door, and standing outside it, shut it. You may thank God that we have got this man, he said. He is a great man and one of the greatest lawyers in South Africa, and one of the greatest friends of your people. I do thank God, and you too, Father, but tell me, I have one anxiety. What will it cost? My little money is nearly exhausted. Did you not hear him say he would take the case pro Deo? Ah, yes, you have not heard of that before. It is Latin, and it means for God, so it will cost you nothing. Or at least very little. He takes it for God? That is what it meant in the old days of faith, though it has lost much of that meaning, but it still means that the case is taken for nothing. Kumalo stammered. I have never met such kindness, he said. He turned away his face, for he wept easily these days. Father Vincent smiled at him. Go well, he said, and went back to the lawyer who was taking the case for God.